So I want to get into something that's more practical to probably to us all here, right? Purpose and meaning. So one thing in common in all three books, as expected, is that as AI 2.0 superintelligence displaces workers, there will be a loss of purpose, for those affected, bringing about enormous ethical and societal implications. Now, while Lee argues this could exacerbate inequality, Bostrom argues that as labor becomes obsolete, causing what he notes Bill Gates has coined the purpose problem, with the right economic policies, we would enter an age of abundance with general prosperity and material plenty for all. In the place of work, a leisure culture would rise up and allow people to thrive in unemployment. Unemployed people could pursue hobbies, spirituality, the arts, literature, sports, nature, etc. Kurzweil believes the GDP will actually grow exponentially due to AI-driven advances, and thus the social safety net will be able to provide a comfortable living for everyone through a universal basic income, a UBI, right? Funded by automation-driven profits sometime in the early 2000s in developed countries and soon to come to third world countries. So George, the Discovery Institute sees human technological innovation as bringing about an age of superabundance. What role do you see AI playing in that vision, and how does it compare to the competing visions of Lee versus Bostrom and Kurzweil? Do you see a future of UBI workers replaced or displaced by AI?
No, I think that Andrew Main's speech is correct, that people don't get hired because of their lacks. They get hired because of what they can do, and AI will amplify the skills of workers and create more work. This whole illusion that somehow people are hired because they lack capabilities is totally uneconomic.
I think, Andy Wang, who was running for president once, and I think also Mark Zuckerberg said that we eventually will be, basically people will be UBI. Everyone will be on UBI, right?
What will be what?
Everyone will be on UBI, Universal Basic Income, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's dehumanizing the world. I mean, this is really reflects these delusional computer scientists, in my view, who have no sense of the meaning of human life or its spiritual dimensions or our creativity in the image of our Creator, or any of the things that make our lives meaningful and valuable. I think AI, by non-human jobs, will release humans to new creativity and new accomplishment and to better jobs, which has been the experience of all.
Okay. Well, we'll tackle the ship of Theseus a little bit later. So, Bob, do you think it's realistic that we'll get to the point where the tasks and challenges that have given structure, purpose, and meaning to human lives for millennia will somehow be supplanted by AI?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think that in the past we have been... repeat the question.
Oh, yeah. Do you think it's realistic that we'll get to the point where the tasks and challenges that give us structure, purpose, and meaning to human lives for millennia now will somehow be supplanted by AI?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think that today we are enamored by GPT more than any other AI because it's come into our living rooms and we can use it. Not many people know, for example, every time you use your credit card, your credit score is checked by a AI. Founded by Heck Nielsen Corporation, who sold, I believe, to Fair Isaac for $93 million or something like that. And so the forecast of your power consumption is generated by AI. But these are all behind the scenes. We have now GPT, which is in our living room, which we can use. And I think that in the past, we have just been enamored. I don't know about you, but George predicted the coming of the cell phone. And when the cell phone first came, I went, wow, I'm old enough to remember when we had landlines, and the cell phone just blew me away. A GPS system, wow, this is really incredible. And so we have these new technologies come around, and there's kind of a peak of hype which was addressed in the hype curve, which was shown earlier, and there's a peak of hype, and everybody gets excited about it. But I maintain that probably in 10 or 15 years, that all of this large language model stuff will be something which is incorporated into our society, which will make our lives better. Technology historically has made our lives better, right? We're not out hoeing our fields. We have tractors to do that now. And we can all be here listening to great speakers.
So, Bob, we talked earlier about diminishing returns, and Andy Kessler had mentioned that in his article a couple of weeks ago. What is your thought? Is that what you're saying, is that you think there'll be diminishing returns?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at the history of AI, and I believe I mentioned this last year, but it turns out there are algorithmic advances made by human beings. AI doesn't write better AI. You had the error back propagation. You had in 2017, Ian Goodfellow came along with GAN, which is the foundation for deep fakes. And then 2017, information is all you need for the transformers. And all of these were quantum steps which were generated by human ingenuity. And each one of these has come out, and then everybody does an application. And that's what we've seen here. A lot of people are applying these basic algorithms. Even Sam Altman, the president of AI, said, I think probably in an unguarded moment, that in order to go forward with this, we need a new algorithm. And so we're waiting for the next big algorithm on the form of a GAN or a chat GPT or a transformer model in order to get to the next level. But right now it's all incremental, and I've seen this in the history of artificial intelligence.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Bill, so now Bostrom notes at the heart of the argument around purpose lies a pessimistic view of human nature, that basically we're unfit to inhabit a perfect world. How would you describe human nature in view of the potential of AI in Bostrom's position?
Well, let me frame that question. Milton Friedman, years back, he was, I think, treated to, kind of a Potemkin village in Russia, where he saw, full employment, and he had these workers who were working with pickaxes and shovels. And his point, what he responded was when they said, "Isn't it amazing that we've got this full employment?" He says, "Well, if you want to really get even fuller employment, just give them spoons instead of shovels." So it's not just work, it's meaningful work, it's achievement. I think that's going to be crucial, and can that be maintained? And I'm a Christian, so when I read Genesis, I find that there's work in the garden before the fall. So work is something fundamental. I work with some Clemson University personality theorists. We've been developing a personality inventory. And, it's clear, social relationships and work, those are the two key factors of human happiness. So a world of leisure, spirituality, arts, no adversity, no challenges, type of Robert Nozick experience machine in his book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia. It's interesting. That was the 1974 utopia, and that's the sort of, the grim utopia that Bostrom is talking about. So these themes have been around, and, so we need meaningful work. And, and I believe we will always have that. I loved Andrew Main's, his approach to it, and I think there's always going to be that. But I think we have to also have a perspective that it's not going to get to the point of everything that the AIs can do, they can do better than us. It seems to me that there is always going to be a fundamental gap, that we will be the only artificial general intelligence. Now, I come at that, I think partly for metaphysical reasons. I think the whole issue of consciousness, for instance, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit later, but so there's this problem of with work, how do we keep finding the meaningful work in a way that where we just give me a moment, let me collect my thought. But it seems to me what we're doing with artificial intelligence these days is it's more of a bottom-up sort of approach. We solve problem after problem after problem. If you read Kurzweil, his approach is more top-down. We're going to simulate and just simulate everything away. And this takes me back to, actually, it was in 1998 at a Telecosm conference where I was introduced to Kurzweil. You were the one who organized that. And Kurzweil, he was talking the same sort of game about simulation, and I remember there was a fellow named Michael Denton who was there, and he says, we can't even simulate a neuron. I mean, you think about a single neuron. You know, you've got the body, you've got dendrites. An average neuron in the brain is going to have 1,000 to 10,000 connections where, you know, you've got the dendrites, the axon, the cell body, the axon terminal, the boutons that connect then with other dendrites. You've got at least eight different neurotransmitters, you know, dopamine, serotonin, you know, you got the endorphins, you know, some are excitatory, some are inhibitory. Modeling all of that, these are chaotic systems, you know, and I think Kurzweil would have to say, well, we're just going to go after the functional part of it, and we can simplify that. But where's the evidence of that? You know, that all of that sort of complexity with all those neurotransmitters is dispensable, that we can just substitute some zeros and ones or maybe some vector with some weights in it, and that's going to capture the neuron. We have absolutely no evidence for that, and that is then going to allow us to bootstrap that sort of simulation to get then a purely artificial computational system that will match up with all of human capability. It's ridiculous. I mean, there's absolutely no evidence for it. You know, if we're not able even to model a single neuron, you know, and I come at this, you know, I did a PhD with Leo Kadanoff at a time when chaos, nonlinear dynamics was the rage back in 1988. You know, you know, I think he has to put his head in the sand and say, you know, and basically hope against hope that all this complexity that we find at the level of single neurons is not going to undercut his attempt to do a computational reduction. And he's got no evidence of that.